Hello and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Gene Curl and this channel focuses on religion and spirituality, fountain pens, journaling, and of course my life. This is the 10th part in a series of my deconversion, but you can watch this video without having seen the rest of the series and still get something out of it. However, it may benefit you to go back and watch the rest of the series if you haven't done so already. I have always been an introspective person, sometimes to my own detriment. However, it has not always been easy for me to explain, even to myself, exactly what I was feeling or why I was feeling it, and it takes me a while to parse it all out. My hope is that by the end of this video, I will have untangled the gnarled mess of a web that is my mind, and that I will have explained myself so fully and succinctly that you can understand where I'm coming from. After I've said my piece and put my thoughts out on the public chopping block, I hope you will be able to empathize with me even if you can't relate. And that if you feel the need to comment, that you do so from a place of love and mutual respect. However, being a realist, I know how the comment section of the internet works, and I don't expect everyone to play nice. With that said, let's begin. First off, I have a confession to make. I'm an addict. And I have been for as long as I can remember. No, I'm not addicted to alcohol or any substance, or even any vice. I'm addicted to religion, and try as I may, I have never been able to shake the addiction. For some reason, whether I'm participating in a religion or not, religion and theology have always been maniacally important to me, and I have no clear idea as to why. My sisters were raised in the same culture and environment that I was, and subjected to the same religious fervor and teachings, and they share no such obsession of religion, which offers some interesting insight into the nature versus nurture debate, but that's not the subject of today's video, so we will move on. As I mentioned, this is the 10th part in the series. For the sake of those who didn't watch the earlier videos, and for those who need a refresher, I will go a little through my religious journey. My first religious encounter was realistically my first day on earth, as I was taught my father's particular brand of hellfire and damnation, fear of the end of the world, everything that is not part of the religion is of the devil, fundamentalist Christian religion from birth. My mental state as a child was a bit difficult to explain, as I thought that everything my parents taught me must be true because they were teaching it to me, while at the same time doubting literally everything they told me, as it was painfully obvious that much of it was not exactly congruent with reality, and demonstrably so. In the religion I grew up in, physical and mental abuse in the name of God were the norm. The rules and doctrines were constantly in a state of flux, and almost everything that happened in the world was a sign of the end of the times, and therefore cause to panic. While I logically knew from an extremely early age that the religion of my birth was not correct, and that nothing about it was good, wholesome, or holy, a deeply instilled fear kept me from admitting, even to myself, that I was questioning the faith. I was taught to believe that if I were to ever question the faith, even slightly, that by doing so, I would be committing a mortal sin that would not only offend God, putting my eternal destiny in jeopardy, but I would also be betraying my family in the most vile and disrespectful ways. I also could not lightly dismiss the real possibility that if I questioned my father's teachings too much, that I may disappear to be never seen again, or at least not alive. Some of my father's favorite things to say were, "I could be like Jim Jones if I wanted to be," and "If you ever betray me, no one will ever find your body." I eventually broke free from the faith, but it took years and countless hours of therapy to mostly root out all of its tendrils from my brain. Honestly, I'm not sure that I will ever be able to completely undo all of the harm and mental conditioning instilled by my childhood. When I gave up on my father's religious teachings, I'm not sure that I had what you could be described as a God-shaped hole in my soul, as I never had what could be considered a true religious experience. But the abandonment of my faith certainly left a noticeable void in my psyche. Breaking free from an oppressive religion gave me too much freedom, and I wasn't sure what to do with it, so I subconsciously felt the need to give away some of my freedom for structure, and for some sort of a promise of future happiness. With a mindset such as I had at the time, it wasn't long before I was deceived by yet another cult, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, also known as the Mormons. The church was enticing to me because of how nice the people were to me and because of how much they truly seemed to care about me, and also in no small part due to their persuasive recruiting tactics. I was searching for meaning in my life, but wasn't sure what it would look like, so I was a prime candidate for conversion to the faith. I had severe doubts early on in my new faith that persisted throughout, but not willing to admit that I had been deceived yet again, only this time by my own doing instead of being forced upon me from birth. I convinced myself that the problem was with me and not with the faith. As a result of thinking I was the problem and not the church, I devoted my entire life to the church for more than 10 years, giving everything that was asked of me and then some, even going so far as to spend 2 years of my life fully committed to converting others to the faith. I served a 2-year mission for the church. I really should have learned my lesson earlier and cut my losses sooner, but I have not always subscribed to the notion that a person should not continue in a mistake just because he or she has so much invested in it. When I finally broke free from the church, I decided that all religions were false and that there was no God, and I set out to prove to the world that God was nothing more than a fairy tale, and an insidious one at that. For the better part of 3 years, I could be accurately described as a militant atheist, or even a militant anti-theist. The point is, I made it my mission to destroy religion, and honestly, during that point in my life, I was so angry at having devoted my entire life to a lie that I was often an insufferable jerk, to put it politely. It is only natural to feel anger towards the institution that sold you a bill of goods when you realize that you have been taken advantage of and used. And that is why most people who leave religion are angry with religion for a while. However, angry rhetoric is not likely to change hearts and minds, and therefore I think all new atheists, myself included, should just keep their mouths shut for the first few years, until they have calmed down and spent most of their anger in vitriol. When I first came out as atheist, I spent a lot of my time railing against religion, and everything I said was angry, and I don't think that I helped anybody with that mindset. So I think I'm included when I say that I think that all new atheists should just keep quiet for the first few years until after they calm down, and then when they can speak without just being angry. But you know what? If you're a new atheist and you're speaking out, I'm not saying you can't do that. It's just my personal opinion. So I spent so much time and energy railing against religion that I didn't take any time to replace it in my life. And when the 3 years had passed and my anger was gone, I just felt empty. At the time, I worked for a tour bus company, and the boss, who was also an atheist, thought it was hilarious to put me with church groups as he thought it would make me uncomfortable. And sometimes it did. Mostly, though, I just ignored the religious passengers and never let on that I did not buy what they were selling, partially because I thought it may affect my tip, but mostly because I just didn't want them to try and convert me to their brand of religion. You see, if they thought I was already deeply converted to another sect, they would just let me be. But if they thought I was lost, they would make it their mission to save me. Eventually, I was at the right place in my life where the right group would have some effect upon me, and I started to reconsider religion and the existence of God. I was just starting to recover mentally and financially from a horribly contentious and devastating divorce, and I felt there was something truly missing from my life, and since having some sort of meaning was always exceedingly important to me, when I was invited to join in on the group, I agreed. And the event affected me in the way in which it was designed to, and I eventually started considering the possibility that there may be a God, and I started attending church again. Not the LDS church, but I started attending a Christian church. I'm not sure why I thought attending a religion would give me purpose and meaning in my life, as faith in God and participating in religious activities had never given me a sense of purpose or meaning before, but I thought that perhaps I just hadn't tried the right one. Despite the fact that I was attending church every week, reading the Bible daily, praying, going to Bible study, and doing all of the things a quote-unquote good Christian is expected to do, I was still plagued by doubts and determined that I should organize my thoughts as to why I doubted, and I thought that perhaps it would help with my faith. After a while, I decided that my faith journey may even help others in a similar situation, and I started the Recovering Faith podcast and blog. The ultimate goal, or as some may say, the prime directive of the podcast and blog was to work through all of my issues of doubt and in the process grow and strengthen my faith, hopefully helping others in a similar situation along the way. Sounds simple, right? Well, it was not always as easy as that, and despite often sounding confident in my faith, not only were my efforts not having the desired effect upon my faith, but I began to struggle mightily with the motivation to continue the podcast and blog, and I often had to force myself to produce new content, which was sometimes almost more than I could mentally handle. For the record, because I hosted a Christian podcast, some people came to the conclusion that I was solid in my faith, despite the fact that I never actually claimed that I was. And I was fairly honest up front about my doubts. I never let on that I was something I wasn't. From the day I decided to give God a second chance, I read the Bible almost daily and prayed multiple times per day. I persisted even though I didn't get much out of reading the Bible, and it felt like nothing more than reading a book that I had read multiple times before. And the act of praying made me feel silly and awkward, like I was having a conversation with myself. I chided myself and even judged myself for feeling that way, but I could not help how I felt, and I didn't know what to do to change the situation. I longed for that deep relationship with God that people often tell me they have, but praying has never amounted to much more than talking to myself, and I have never felt like I received a divine answer to a question asked of God or divine intervention to a situation brought before God, and I have never felt the presence of God in my life. Most of my life, I felt like if there was a God who cared about his children and communicated with them, that I must be doing something wrong, as I received no such communication and never felt the unconditional love that others talk about so fondly. I reasoned that either there was something so deficient in me that God did not care about me, or everyone else was exaggerating their encounters with God, if not outright lying about them. As is typical with me, I went with the assumption that all of the people who were telling me that they have a deep and profound relationship with God spoke truthfully and accurately when they described their experiences, and that the problem was with me. I often say this, but it's completely true. There have been times in my life when I was absolutely certain there was a God, and there have been times in my life when I was absolutely certain there was no God, but there has never been a time in my life when I haven't cared either way. And I think therein lies the problem. Faith and religion have always been such a huge part of my personal identity that, honestly, I'm not sure who I am without it. Often, as a child, when my sisters were thinking about the latest cartoon or toy, I was thinking about God and religion, and otherwise trying to figure out life. My sisters always wanted to watch cartoons, but I would often get up early on Sunday morning and watch the preachers on television. Apparently, I was a strange child. I'm well aware that at this point, most of my atheist friends, assuming they even care enough to watch this, are thinking that I was foolish to go crawling back to religion. And my Christian friends, assuming they care enough to watch this, are worried that I'm backsliding and putting my salvation at risk. I want to believe that there is an all-powerful, all-knowing, all-loving God that has a divine plan for my life, and that all of my suffering, and indeed all the suffering throughout the world and throughout all time, has been to further some greater purpose. But I would be lying if I said I actually believe that. Even when I was a militant atheist and militant against religion, I wanted to believe that there was a God who loved me and had a divine purpose for my life. I just couldn't and saw no reasonable argument for it. I still have no evidence that there is a God, or at least not a God that takes an active part in the affairs on this earth, and especially not a God that cares about my life. After several years of attending church weekly, praying and reading the Bible daily, and hosting a Christian blog, I realized that no amount of effort could force me to believe what I don't believe, and that if there is a God, and that God wants me to worship him, he must first let me know that he is there and that he cares about me. Despite what some people think, I didn't stop attending church so I could sin, but rather because I can't believe in an all-loving, all-powerful God when all the evidence suggests that either there is no God or else that God doesn't care about the state of the world, much less about me as an individual. Honestly, I don't live my life any differently now than when I went to church. I just don't attend church anymore. Well, that's pretty much will wrap up this video. Thanks for watching. Hopefully you found some benefit to this video, and if so, please click the like button. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel so you won't miss any videos when I post them in the future. And if you have any questions for me, anything that I left out on my story that you're curious about or anything like that, don't hesitate to comment down below, and I will get back with you as soon as I can in answering the questions. So thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.